All right, so Shabbat Shalom to you all, to those that are logged in and watching. Um, this is the Gathering of Christ Church, upstate New York Ustream uh, channel, and the beginning of the Sabbath Ustream. We normally do this every Friday. Um, Today's lesson, we're gonna do kind of a repeat on what we did this past Sabbath. Going into a little bit on the real basic origins of religion, and then also we showed and proved that Horus is actually the biblical Ham. Okay, but before we get started with that with the lesson, I want to thank the Most High first and foremost, in the name of Yeshua, for another Shabbat and another opportunity to bring forth another lesson to the brothers and sisters. And I want to ask the Most High that He blesses your Sabbaths, and that you have a blessed Sabbath going forward. Okay, and that the rest of your Sabbath is absolutely blessed. As you can see, brother Maznaz is he's on a trip with his dad and his brother and his family. So we got brother Dashe from the upstate New York congregation. It's gonna be assisting me. It's gonna be my reader. And I thank the Most High just for providing brothers, because we were a little short-handed, but throughout the past month or so, we've had a boost in with the Most High just sending us brothers, and we love the dedication. All right, so we want to thank the Most High for his hand in helping us and sending us help, because it's definitely needed. So what we're going to do, we're going to get started into the lesson. Like I said, we're going to show and prove beyond any shadow of a doubt that the biblical Ham, okay, the son of Noah, Ham, is actually the Egyptian god Horus. Okay, we're going to show who he is as far as the Sumerian culture is concerned. And what we're going to show and prove is that religion, any religion, whether it's Christianity, whether it's Islam, whatever religion, whatever spirituality that you go into, it consists of two things. Okay, we're going to show that the Hebrews religion is outside of any is totally opposite of than any other nations religions, or their spiritual practice. We're set apart from other nations. Okay, but like I said, we're going to prove beyond any shadow of a doubt that whatever religion you go into, you're dealing with two basic elements of any religion, and we're going to get into what those basic elements are. But nonetheless, still, like I said, we're going to show and prove that Horus is actually Ham, and that many of the deities or idols that we have today, a lot of them are just deified ancestors, from the past. And many of these people you can find within the scriptures. What society kind of does, that throughout time they change the names of these people from their biblical, from their original names, and going into different cultures and different nations, they switch the name. So when we're looking at these different gods, we're thinking that they're just a figment of someone's imagination, or just some made up deity. But we're going to find out that a lot of these deities are actually historical figures. Okay, so let's let's jump right into it. What I got here, I got a printout of a document called the Giza Discovery. Let me see if I can get it up here for you guys. All right, the Giza Discovery. Okay, look it up. It's a good document. A lot of mind-blowing information. All right. And it's nothing that someone just typed up. We got quotes in here from famous and highly respected archaeologists that we're gonna actually go and go through some of their works. We got a few historians in here. It's a lot of pages. This thing is about I want to say close to maybe 70, 80 pages. So it's a lot of information, but we're going to get into just a little bit of it. Okay, cover the main part so that we can get down to this fantastic lesson. So let me see. Let's get started really quick. We're going to jump into it. We got to go through a little bit of history before we actually get into the meat of it, so that once we do get to the end, to be able to understand and prove that Horus is actually Ham, some understanding needs to be given before we actually get to that part. All right, because I don't want to get to the end of it and then have a whole bunch of questions and people are kind of just lost. So just bear with us. We're gonna do just a little bit of reading, but trust and believe me, it's all going to be worth it. Okay. So we're going to go into this section now. First off, like I said, we got to break down religion. Okay, we got to break down the religion first. Okay, and like I said, religion is based off of two basic elements. Any religion. Okay. Two elements. As a matter of fact, we're going to go into the third element, but in order to understand this specific lesson, it's based off of two elements. But I'm gonna get the third, just so just so I'm not leaving that part out. Okay, and then that way we can get some understanding. Because as I was going back through this, I said, well, let me just bring out the third, and we can kind of broaden it, and give just a little more than what we actually did last service. See, last service we only went through the two elements, but I want to give the third, since we're going to record this and since we're going to post it. We might as well just give everything away and just bring further edification. Okay, so we're going to get into the Giza discovery. We're going to get into a section called the spirit world and civilization. Okay, like I said, we have to break down religion. Okay, so we're gonna get into this specific topic. Let's get let's see. Start from this paragraph right there.
It was from this new perspective that James G. Fraser developed his theories on how religion could have evolved in such an essential part of human life.
Mm-hmm.
What was religion and where did it come from?
So that's the question that we have to ask ourselves. Okay, what was religion and where did it come from? Because everything has an origin. Everything comes from somewhere. All right, and religion, modern day religion as we know it, it had its origin somewhere in ancient time. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go as far back as we possibly can and get the basic elements of where religion came from. Okay, because in order to understand what we're going to bring out at the end of this, these basic understandings of religion has to be understood before we actually go forward. Okay, so what was religion in ancient time? Okay, what was religion during the time of Abraham? Okay, or even before Abraham? Okay, where did it come from? Okay, did someone just say, hey, I'm gonna build a church and we're gonna start worshiping it or worshiping in it, or where did religion come from? Okay, go ahead.
Like Sigmund Freud, Fraser believed that the answer would not be found in the world of spirit, but rather in the world of matter.
So he says that the answer to understanding, okay, where religion came from, it won't be found in the world of spirit. Okay, because see, before everyone, we in religion, spirituality is claimed, but the answer to what religion is, you have to go back before that spiritual aspect came into. You got to go into the realm of matter, and we're going to get out of the scriptures why that's the case. Okay, because what we're going to go into, we're going to show that the Bible actually backs up what these brothers actually brought out. Okay, so there's no level of confusion that can be brought. There's no the obvious questions will be answered, okay, using the Bible. Okay, so the answer to finding out where religion actually came from, it won't be found in the realm of spirit, but in the realm of matter. Go ahead.
In terms that can be perceived by 5 senses.
In terms that can be perceived by 5 senses. Go ahead.
From this perspective, Fraser concluded that mankind's earliest religions, beliefs, merely attempts to understand and bring order in the physical world of nature.
Mm-hmm.
This new hypothesis fit in well with the current philosophies, trends, and quickly became accepted academic consensus.
Mm-hmm.
It was the idea that religion, even though it was evolved into different complicated forms in many different cultures, was at its root simply nature worship.
So it said that it was the idea that religion, even though it has evolved into different complicated forms, right? We got Christianity, we got Islam, we got Buddhism, we got people that practice yoga, which is still, dealing with they portray it as a thing for exercising and being fit and healthy, but really what you're doing, you're invoking spiritual activity, and you're dealing with realms that are outside of the Most High. But it says in many different cultures was at its root simply nature worship. Okay, so like we said, when we're dealing with what religion is in its origin, okay, in ancient time you had men and women that, to understand the world around them, they saw fire, water, wind, the sun, the moon, the stars. They seen these as great things within our plane of reality, and they would deify them. Okay, so religion, one of the basic roots of religion is simply just nature worship. Okay, now is this something that these brothers just came across, or does the Bible back this up too? Okay, let's get the Wisdom of Solomon out of the Apocrypha. Wisdom of Solomon 13, and we're going to start at 1. 13 and 1, Wisdom of Solomon.
Surely vain are all men by nature.
See, the scripture says, surely vain are all men by nature. Okay? It's going to say why. Go ahead.
Who are ignorant of God and cannot out of the good things that are seen, knowing him that is.
So the men are ignorant of the Most High. This is what the scripture is testifying. Okay? In ancient time, men were ignorant of the Most High. Now, and we're going to get into it a little bit of what time this is actually speaking of. Okay? Because it was at one point in time where all men actually knew their Creator. Okay? Noah taught all his sons about the law, statutes, and commandments. So it was at one point in time where men knew who the Creator was. And then throughout time, through the evils of man, men became ignorant of the Most High, okay, and started worshiping and doing things other than, worshiping other things other than the Most High. It's going to get into it. So they're ignorant of the Most High. Read that part again.
And could not out of the good things that are seen, knowing him that is, neither by considering the works did they acknowledge the workmaster.
So they couldn't see from the things that were able to be seen, like the sun, the moon, the stars, all the things that the Father has created. They were not able to recognize the Creator of those things. Okay? Like I just said, they were ignorant of the Most High. Okay, they were not able to acknowledge the workmen of these elements. Go ahead.
But deemed either fire or wind or the swift air or the circle of the stars
Mm-hmm.
or the violent water
Mm-hmm.
or the lights of heaven
Mm-hmm.
to be the gods which govern the world.
So they started to, so because they were ignorant of the Most High, all right, they deemed either fire, water, air, all these different elements, okay, sun, moon, stars, they started to deem these things as being gods. Okay, just as we just read in the Giza discovery, that the basic root of religion, okay, is found in the realm that can, or is found in the realm of reality that can be perceived with the five senses. So what men and women were doing in ancient time, because they were ignorant of the Most High, they perceived nature to be the gods that were the creators of everything. Okay, this is a basic element of all religion. Okay, it's not a coincidence that within Christianity, okay, they have Jesus Christ with a little, circle around his head. It's sun worship. It's no coincidence that they go to church on Sunday. Okay, it's a day of sun worship. All religion in its origin, at the root of it, it's nature worship. Okay, period. Okay, so the scriptures here is testifying that men being ignorant of the Most High, they begin to deem fire, water, air, sun, moon, and stars, all these things to be gods. Okay, this is the root of religion. Okay, the root of idolatry, nature worship. Go ahead.
With whose beauty, if they being delighted, took them to be gods.
They took them to be gods. Okay, they seen these beautiful orbs in the sky, the sun and the moon and the stars, and they took these things to be gods. They seen the power of fire, and they took it to be a god. They seen the destructive power of the wind, so they took it to be a god. Okay, anything that we saw that was able to do something more than us, we took it to be a god as far as elements go. Okay, go ahead.
Let them know how much better the Most High of them is, for first author of beauty hath created them.
Mm-hmm.
But if they were astonished at their power and virtue,
Mm-hmm.
let them understand by them how much mightier he is that made them.
Okay, so we can see here that because men and women at that time, they weren't able to understand that, okay, if I see the sun in all its greatness, all its power, and all its glory, what about the one that created these things? How much more powerful is he? The sun is a great creation. The power is within the sun is, it's unimaginable. So if the sun in all its glory and all its greatness, all its power is that powerful, how much more powerful is the one who created it? But men, of course, like how it says in the beginning of that chapter, men were vain. They couldn't understand and see the Most High in these creations. They couldn't find out the one who created these things. Right? So religion, one of the roots of religion is simply nature worship. Okay? Let's go back to the discovery. Read the highlighted part again. Yeah, right there.
It was the idea that religion, even though it was evolved into different complicated forms in many different cultures, it was at its root simply nature worship.
It was simply at its root nature worship. Now we said that there were two elements. Okay, we're going to go into the third one, but there's two when we're dealing with what we're going to go into today. Okay, so one of the elements, one of the roots of religion is simply nature worship. This was the beginning of idolatry. This was the beginning of religion in ancient time. They took these elements and began to deify them. Okay? Period. Like I said, it's no coincidence that Christians go to church on Sunday. Okay? It's the day of the sun. No coincidence that they show, when they show images of a Jesus Christ, they show him with, a sun symbol around his head. It's simply nature worship at its core. Okay? Let's keep going further. Yep. Next one.
Alongside the nature worship component of early religion, it was also understood that as a primitive man advanced, a tendency arose to deify some of the more influential human ancestors that had left behind significant or meaningful legacies.
So, it says alongside the nature worship component of early religion, it was also understood that as primitive man advanced, it says a tendency arose to deify some of the more influential human ancestors that had left behind significant or meaningful legacies. Okay? Now, does the Bible speak about this? We're going to show. Yes, it does. All right? So, next to nature worship, okay, they deified these elements, right? Let's see what else they did.
This practice of ancestor worship was acknowledged by the ancient cultures themselves and widely written about by the Greeks.
So, what they did alongside with the nature worship, they also deified their ancestors. Okay? Their ancient ancestors. People who they deemed as meaningful. Or like how it says here, left behind significant or meaningful legacies. Okay? So what they were doing was they were deifying people that they deemed important to them. Every nation had done that. We're going to show except for the children of Israel. See, we didn't deify our ancestors. You can't find not one tomb or statue or whatever the case may be that a Hebrew said, this is Abraham, let's all bow down and worship him. But we're going to find out, okay, that the nations, all nations, have deified either they deified their ancestors, okay, or they deified different elements in nature and made them gods. See, like how Solomon says, there's nothing new under the sun. Everything that's happened in the past is happening even today. Nothing has changed. The only thing that has changed now is we put different labels and names on things to make it seem like it's changed, but it's the same thing that's been happening since ancient time. All of the religions today are nothing more or simply just nature worship or ancestor worship. Okay? So like it says again, it says alongside the nature worship component of early religion, it was also understood that as primitive man advanced, a tendency arose to deify some of the more influential human ancestors that had left behind significant or meaningful legacies. Okay? This practice of ancestor worship was acknowledged by the ancient cultures themselves and widely written about by the Greeks. Go ahead.
For instance, in Plato's Euthydemus, Socrates refers to the ancient gods as his lords and ancestors.
See, he says he refers to the ancient gods as his lords and ancestors. Okay?
While Euhemerus, while another Greek philosopher was argued that ancestor worship was the primary source of religion.
See, so you have Greek historians that were writing about these things. Okay? And said, look, that ancestor worship, it says, is the primary source of religion. Okay? So now we can understand when the scriptures speak about, when the Most High says, all the gods of the nations are nothing but idols. Okay? Now we can understand that with these idols, now we understand why they are not gods. They are simply either just elements of nature, or they're a deified person, a deified ancestor of that specific people. Okay. Let's go to the next one because I want to pull out the third one. Okay. Start from the top there.
In addition to these two major components that were a part of man's early religious beliefs, there is another component.
So in addition to these two major components of religion, okay, we got ancestor worship, we have nature worship. Now let's get the third, okay, root of religion. Okay. In addition to these two major components, that were a part of man's early religious beliefs, there is another component. Go ahead.
It was named by the ancients themselves as the original basis of their beliefs.
It was named by the ancients themselves as the original basis of their beliefs. Go ahead.
Yet it is usually minimized or ignored within mainstream academia.
It is minimized or ignored within mainstream academia. Okay? See, they can't put out there that your religion or what you believe as far as religion is concerned. Okay? Because see, what the Hebrews do, we don't deal with religion. Okay? The Bible is a book of heritage. This is our history book. We don't deal with religion. We're not Christians. Okay? We're not Muslims. We're not Buddhists. We're not, whatever other title that they have out there. But they can't let the people know that, okay, your religion is based off of these three components, because if people knew that, then they would know and understand, okay, well, if I'm not serving the Creator, then who am I serving? Because you got Christians today that swear up and down that they're serving and worshiping the Creator. But if they come out and say, okay, that this is actually sun worship at its best, they're going to be like, okay, well, I'm not going to deal with this if I'm not serving the Creator. So they have to make people think that the Creator is involved in this. It's just another tactic of Satan. They have no idea that they're sun worshipers. They do it ignorantly. They don't know it all. Okay? But they're sun worshipers. Okay? Christ said, many will come in my name and shall deceive many. They're using the name of Christ to get these people to worship the sun. And they have no idea that they're doing it. Okay? But these things are hidden by mainstream academia. They cannot come out and straightly say, you guys are dealing with sun worship, or you guys are worshiping an ancient ancestor, or whatever the case is, right? Let's get the third component. Go ahead.
Today it is readily acknowledged in the Eastern Alternative or New Age circles, but it is also something else that has been understood within the Judeo-Christian tradition right from the beginning. This most important and foundational component of religion is spirit worship.
So the third component of religion is spirit worship. So not only do you have men and women worshiping nature elements, you have them worshiping ancestors, deified ancestors, but they're also worshiping spirits, which are fallen angels. Okay, and a lot of times demons. Okay, so that's the third component, and maybe we'll go into that at a later time. But I want to stick on the topic. I just wanted to give that just so that we can kind of get that out of the way, and I'll do something else dealing with the spirit worship element of religion. But to understand this specific topic, I want to stay on course. I don't want to go off and start dealing with something else. Okay, so ancestor worship. Okay, the two components that we're dealing with when it comes to this topic. Okay, nature worship. All right, and then you have ancestor worship. Right. Now let's see if the Bible speaks about ancestor worship. Let's get Wisdom of Solomon 14. And start at verse start at verse 9. Okay.
For the ungodly and his ungodliness are both alike hateful unto the Most High. For that is which made shall be punished together with him that made it. Therefore, even upon the idols of the Gentiles shall there be a visitation, because in the creature of the Most High they are became an abomination. and stumble blocks to the souls of men, and a snare that the feet of the unwise.
So these idols have become a snare to men. Okay, they become a trap. Okay, but the Most High is saying that when that time of visitation comes, He's going to bring that visitation not only on the men who devised and created these idols, but upon the idols themselves. So see, nothing is going to escape the judgment of the Most High. All right. Many people have stumbled, and many people are stumbling and falling because of these idols. Okay, but we're gonna get it at its core. Go ahead.
For the devising of idols was the beginning of spiritual fornication.
The devising of idols is the beginning of spiritual fornication, because once you start dealing with an idol, you start leaving your creator. Once men started deifying elements like the sun, the moon, the stars, they began to leave off from the creator. Once they started deifying their ancestors, they began to leave off from the creator. This is the beginning of spiritual fornication. Okay? Go ahead.
And the invention of them, the corruption of life.
And the invention of them is the corruption of life. Go ahead.
For neither were they from the beginning.
They were not here in the beginning. They had to start from somewhere.
Neither shall they be forever.
Neither shall they be forever. So we got their beginning. Okay? We're going to show we're going into the second component of religion, but the first component in Wisdom of Solomon chapter 13, we got the idea or the fact that one of the roots of idolatry was that men began to deify certain aspects of nature. Okay? Now we're dealing with ancestor worship. Go ahead.
For by the vainglory of men, they entered into the world, and therefore shall they come shortly to an end.
Right.
For a father afflicted with ultimately mourning, when he have made an image of his child, soon taken away. Now honored him as God.
So read that verse again.
For a father afflicted with ultimately mourning, when he have made an image of his child, soon taken away, now honored him as God.
So we're getting into the idea of men starting to deify people, starting to make people into gods. Okay, a father that's afflicted with untimely mourning, he took his son that passed on and deified him. This is where we get the whole, Caesar Borgia as Christ. He deified his son. Okay? Nothing has changed since ancient time. It's been happening for thousands of years. Now that we have these deities today, we think that they're just some made up deities. Okay? But we're going to show that what these gods are simply, okay, in its rawest form, without the glamour, without the makeup and the lights and all this and that, right? It's simply either an element of nature, a deity, or a spirit, some sort of angel or something like that. Okay, worshiping fallen angels and demons and whatever the case is. Because the scriptures testify that the things that the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to what? To devils. Okay. Go ahead.
Find back at the top. For a father afflicted with ultimately mourning, when he had made an image of his child, soon taken away, now honored him as God.
Honored him as God. Go ahead.
Which was then a dead man.
Go ahead.
And delivered to those under the ceremonies and sacrifices. Thus in the process of time, an ungodly custom grown strong and was kept as a law.
See? In the process of time, it became a law that this should happen. Okay? That if someone was important to you, or they, like how it says in a document, they left behind some legacy or something that was important, or they were, had some sort of importance to you, you would deify them. All right? This is what the scripture is going into, and it says through time, this became an ungodly custom. It became a law. Men began to do this all over the place. And then what do you have? You have gods springing up all over the place. Idols, false gods just springing up all over the place. But these weren't elements now. Some nations had their elements. And then now you have what? A form of ancestor worship. People worshiping people. Creating statues of them and going as far as sacrificing and making offerings to them. This is the beginning of idolatry. This is the beginning of religion. This is the beginning of cult practice. Okay? Go ahead.
And graven images were worshipped by the commandments of kings.
And graven images were worshipped by the commandments of kings. Now these graven images, okay, were not just made up things. These were actually people that have died and people deified them. And the king said, you know what, this is a law now. For every ancestor that you think is worthy of deification, rear up a statue in his honor, bring some sacrifice and offerings to him, and you know, we're going to make him a god. And then throughout time, it just stayed that way. So now you have people worshiping these different deities and worshiping these different gods, not knowing that they're actually worshiping, people. And some of the main, people will tell you, oh, we don't follow man, we're not worshiping man, or whatever the case may be, but a lot of your idols are nothing but men. Okay, go ahead.
Whom men could not honor in presence, because they dwelt far off.
So even with the kings, at that time, if you couldn't honor him in presence, you couldn't be there with the king, you had to worship afar off. Go ahead.
They took the counterfeit of his visage from far and made an express image of a king.
So what they would do is, because they couldn't worship him, in front or in his presence, they would take the image of that king and build an idol. Okay? Probably sit in their house or something like that, and that way they have the king in their presence at all time. Okay, we get in the beginning of idolatry. Go ahead.
Whom they honored to the end that by this forwardness that they might flatter him that was absent, as if he were present.
See, they did it as a form of flattery. Okay, go ahead.
Also the singular diligence of the artificer did help them set forth the ignorance to more superstition.
Go ahead.
For he peradventure willing to please one in authority, forced all his skill to make the resemblance of the best fashion. And so the multitude of the Lord, by the grace of the work, took him now for a god.
See, now the multitude, okay, it says, the Lord, by the grace of the work, took him now for a god. All right? This is the beginning of idolatry. This is the beginning of religion. You have nature worship, and then you have ancestor worship. Or man worship. Deifying your ancestor, deifying kings, deifying your dead. That's all it is. This is the reason why there are thousands upon thousands of idols, maybe even millions of idols in the world. Because throughout time, the nations who don't know the Most High, they were ignorant of the Most High. Okay? They would deify the sun, the moon, the stars, all the, fire, wind, water, air, animals, people, different spirits. So what you have nowadays is you have millions upon millions of idols in every single nation. Okay? Except for the children of Israel. See, we adopted everyone else's idols. None of those idols belong to us. They belong to the other nations, and we took them and we claimed them for ourselves. Okay, our ancestors abandoned our God and took other nations' gods and began to worship. We are the ones who had the true God. Okay, he said he didn't show himself unto any other nation except for the children of Israel. Okay, So what you have here is the beginning of religion. You have nature worship, then you have ancestor worship. Okay? Now, let's get okay, so now that we have that understanding, as far as religion goes, okay? You have, like I said, nature worship, then you have ancestor worship. Okay? Those are the two components that we're going to be dealing with when it comes to this topic. Okay? So now before we go further, we have to get a little bit of history before we actually, start, getting into the meat of it. Okay? It's a little bit of history that we have to understand before we actually go into it. Okay? So we're going to start at the section titled Egypt's Forgotten Origins. Okay? We're going to go into Egypt's Forgotten Origins in order to understand the ending of this topic. I don't want to give too much away because it's going to ruin it. Okay? So we're just going to, go along with it. All right? Let's get just read this section here.
The origins of Pharaonic civilizations have always been shrouded in mystery. What caused dynastic culture to burst forth in the Nile Valley within such a relatively short period of time?
So Egypt, or the pharaonic age of Egypt, has been always shrouded in mystery, like it says. No one knows when did this civilization, spring up. With all this great writing, this great technology, this great architecture, great language system, great writing system. It just kind of seems to just pop up, right? Go ahead.
There is little evidence of the kingship and its rituals very much before the beginning of the first dynasty. No signs of the gradual development of metalworking art, monumental architecture, and the defining criteria of early civilizations.
So there's no prototype, to anything Egyptian, as far as going to say, this is where we started from, and this is where we got to where we are, right? 1 second. All right. So we have little to no prototypes at all with anything, as far as Egypt goes. There's no prototypes to say, this is where we got our writing system from. This is where we started off, and these are the baby steps that we took to become this great. Egypt seems to just pop up great out of nowhere. Okay? Go ahead.
Much of what we know about the pharaohs and their complex culture seems to come into existence in a flash of inspiration. One of the most controversial questions in the entire field of Egyptology is also its most basic. Where did the advanced pharaonic Egyptian civilization come from?
Where did the advanced Egyptian civilization come from? Because like I said, there's little to no prototypes at all. When it comes to dealing with, the writing system and, the architecture and, whatever the case is. There's really no prototype for Egypt. It just seems to just pop up this great advanced civilization. Go ahead.
At the very beginning of the first dynasties of the Egyptian state appeared to be fully developed, intricately structured, technologically advanced, and economically vibrant.
So, like I said, it just seems just pop up just out of nowhere. Just popped up this great civilization with no help at all, right? So we're going to get the origins, the forgotten origins, of Egypt. All right. Let's go to let's get the dynastic race.
The dynastic race. Petrie came to address the problem of the origin of dynastic Egypt as the result of his excavation of the massive ancient burial site near the village of Nakada, about 20 miles north of Luxor in Upper Egypt.
So we dealing with Flinders Petrie. He's a He's a famous archaeologist, okay, that worked in the you know, Egyptian excavations during his time. Okay, highly respected archaeologist. Okay, so this isn't just coming from someone who just stepped on the field. Okay, he's a highly respected archaeologist. Go ahead.
In the winter of 1894,
In the winter of 1894,
Petrie's team
methodically, yeah.
methodically excavated and recorded the contents of over 2,000 graves.
So they excavated and they recorded the contents of over 2,000 graves. Okay, we're gonna see what they found in these graves. Go ahead.
Which turned out to date to a period in ancient Egypt's history just prior to the emergence of the first dynasty. From the data gathered from the excavations, Petrie realized that the Nakada gravesite contained burials of two entirely different groups of people.
So you have the Nakada grave sites, okay? 2,000 graves in all. And what they found was two different types of people buried here within this excavation. Go ahead.
One group was characterized by bodies placed in simple pits, laid out in fetal positions, and covered with palm branches.
Right.
This group, designated Nakada I, was buried by the simple, everyday objects, including the basic Egyptian pottery that was found in numerous other digs that dated to this time period.
So you had the first grave site, okay, where these bodies were buried. They designated it Nakada 1. Okay, and then you're gonna have another grave site. Okay, now there's two different types of people that's buried within this grave site. Okay, like how we said. So you have Nakada 1. Go ahead.
The other group, Nakada 2, was markedly different. The bodies were buried in pits that were lined with bricks,
right,
which was then covered over with palm logs. These pits contained valuable objects such as lapis lazuli jewelry, and also pottery of new types and functions. The bodies were not buried intact, but only after being dismembered, with the skull buried apart from the torso and members. There were also signs of ritual cannibalism having taken place within the Nakada 2 group, which was completely absent within Nakada 1. The Nakada dig provided much of the evidence that led Flinders Petrie to put forth his theory of the origin of the magnificent and long-lived civilization of Egypt. It became known as the dynastic race theory of the alleged, that is, pre-dynastic Egypt was invaded by the technologically superior group of the elite foreigners, Nakada 2, who came originally from Mesopotamia.
So, what they found in Nakada 2 grave site is they found that these foreigners that came into Egypt actually came all the way from Mesopotamia. Okay? Based on the item that they had within their grave, the way that their graves were lined, and so on and so forth. Okay, Sumerian in style. So we're gonna get a lot more going into that. Okay, so now we have that these these Mesopotamians, okay, came into Egypt a long time ago, before the first dynasty. Okay, these are dated in the pre-dynastic Egypt. Okay, before the first dynasty. Okay, you have the indigenous Egyptians, and you have the Mesopotamians. Okay, let's get a little more. Go ahead.
This dynastic race invaded and conquered Upper Egypt and settled in their city of Nikin, also known as the Hyrcanopolis, where the important coast centers of Abydos, Thebes, Lexer, and Edfu would later emerge. Petrie referred to this invading force as the Falcon Tribe.
So it says Petrie referred to this invading force as the Falcon Tribe. Now we got to remember that term or that title, the Falcon Tribe. Okay, because it's important when you understand the the Falcon Tribe. If I can find a picture. One second. Let me see if I can find this picture. Called them the Falcon Tribe. One second. Okay, now it's going to be important that I show you these pictures here. You see in the middle of the two men, you have on the top of that flag type thing, you have a falcon. Okay. Now it's going to be important that we remember that because it's going to connect with what this brother is Flinders Petrie is identifying these Mesopotamians, okay, this tribe that came over as the Falcon Tribe, okay. It's going to be important that we keep that title, that term, the Falcon Tribe, okay, within your mind because it's going to click in at the end when we identify or we prove prove who Horus is, okay? Like I said, we're going to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that Horus is a deified Ham, okay? The son of Noah, all right? Go ahead, brother.
And the name of their city of Nikin means city of the falcon. Their descendants became the Horus kings of Egypt, with the first dynasty being established under the king named Horus Aha, or Horus the Fighter, after his tribe finally subdued and unified the entire land of Egypt.
All right, so this city, Niken, it says, means city of the falcon. Okay, so like I said, remember this title, the Falcon Tribe. Okay. Let's get let's see one second. The Nakata artifacts. Start at the top.
The Nakata artifacts. The discovery of the massive burial site at the Nakata by Flinders Petrie was briefly mentioned above. Yet more needs to be said. What Petrie found was the conclusive evidence of a group of invaders who were associated with artifacts whose origin was clearly traceable back to Mesopotamia.
So within the Nakata 2 grave site, okay, this tribe that they're deeming or calling the Falcon Tribe, based on the artifacts that they found in there, all these artifacts and can be traced back to Mesopotamia. Okay. Now it says, matter of fact, go read down here real quick.
Another important item present in the Nakata 2 burials was the pear-shaped mace. Supporters of the dynastic race theory argue that the introduction of the weapon from Mesopotamia gave a technological edge to the Nakata 2 invaders, who used it effectively to overwhelm the indigenous Egyptians.
So they used this mace when these Mesopotamians came into Egypt. They used this superior weapon, okay, to overcome their enemies, and we're going to show you. Look at here. So what we bringing out here is that Egypt is in all its greatness, okay, cannot be credited to Egypt alone. Okay, it's a lot more that we might go into, but everything from his great writing system to his great weaponry, okay, to the cylinder seals, to a lot of these different things that Egypt is known and revered for, did not start with Egypt, but came from a highly advanced a race that was more advanced than Egypt. Okay, this technology that was brought into Egypt was brought from Mesopotamia. So a lot of its achievements and a lot of the things that it's revered for are not even Egyptian in origin. It comes from Mesopotamia. Okay. So what you'll see when you see things like this. Oops. One second. There we go. When you see things like that, he's got the mace in his hand. That's Mesopotamian. It's not Egyptian in origin. Okay. And again, now this one might be a little too small. You see what he has in his hand? The mace, and then what do you see on the top of there? All right. You see those birds? Remember the Falcon tribe, okay? Let's see. Square boat invasion.
The square boat invasion. If we accept the premise that a highly resourceful and technological advanced group invaded and subdued Egypt prior to the first dynasties, we do not have to look very far for evidence of how and where they did it. For many years, this evidence has existed yet and has not been very well explained by the mainstream scholars who deny such an invasion even took place.
Right. Yep.
The invasion of Egypt came into the Nile Valley from the Red Sea through the valleys of the Eastern Desert. These valleys are known as Wadis, and then the three Wadis.
Yeah, you don't got a little hard with those names. Just go on
opposite to the settlements of Nakada and Niken, where evidence of this invasion was left in the form of primitive graffiti.
So what we're going to show is we're going to show the evidence of an invasion from the group that came from Mesopotamia invading Egypt and taking over Egypt and finally settling there. Okay, there's evidence of this, but mainstream media and secular Egyptology, they won't put this out there. When they do put it out there, people aren't keen to the images that they're seeing, so they kind of just brush it off as just some fancy fancy art or whatever the case may be. They're not prone to what they're seeing. They don't understand the images that they're seeing. Okay, but we're gonna show you these images that this is gonna go into. Okay, go ahead, brother.
The most common pictures etched in the rock walls of the valleys are pictures of large Mesopotamian-style square boats with the high powers and stern that are braced back.
So they're showing. Okay, we're gonna show these Mesopotamian-style boats, these squared Mesopotamian-style boats. Okay. Whereas the indigenous Egyptians at that time, they had what look like a crescent type boats. Okay, they didn't have those square type boats. Those were Mesopotamian in origin. Okay, but we have the evidence of this invasion between these Mesopotamians and these Egyptians going on. All right, go ahead.
with square-type boats with high prows and sterns that are braced back, which often displays horns, antlers, or streamers. These boats are often filled with people, sometimes with a chieftain figure carrying a pear-shaped mace standing tall in the center.
A pear-shaped mace, like how we showed on those on those pictures. So when you see those pear-shaped maces in an individual, like in the Narmer palette, okay, these aren't indigenous to Egypt. Okay, the origin of these weapons are Mesopotamian. Okay, now and we're showing how these Mesopotamians, this technology finally got into Egypt. It was invaded by a Mesopotamian force, an outside force that came from Mesopotamia. Okay, they took over Mesopotamia and they unified it and began to rule in Egypt. Okay, we're gonna show a timeline that brings all that into full circle. Go ahead.
The waters run east-west, and the prows of the ships also face west toward the Nile. Many of the depictions shows the boats being pulled by the ropes by members of the crew. What happened when this group of invaders finally reached the Nile itself after dragging their boats through the desert from the Red Sea? David Rao refers to the several most important ancient Egyptians artifacts for an answer, including of the following two. The first is known as the Jebel el-Arak knife.
So you have the Jebel el-Arak knife. Okay, go ahead.
This ivory artifact is found near the western end of Wadi Hamama and is important in the images on its intricate carved handle, which specializes give a firm pre-dynastic date. On one side of the carved image point unmistakably a Sumerian source from the master of animals seen wearing a Sumerian hairstyle and long un-Egyptian coat.
All right, now let me. I got one picture. Just let me grab the other one for you so I can show you. All right. So first, what it has. Well, first, what I want to show you first is I want to show you this this square boat invasion. Okay, that was found on this Jebel el-Arak knife that was found in Egypt, but it dates back to the pre-dynastic era. Okay. Showing and etched on the knife, it's showing the invasion with the Mesopotamian boats and the indigenous Egyptian boats. Okay. Here you have the Jebel el-Arak knife. All right. And if you can see here, you can see the square boat. See that square boat there? That's a Mesopotamian boat. And obviously you can see they're having a war. Okay. You see these indigenous Egyptians with sticks and things like that because at this time they didn't have the technology. But then at the bottom you see the crescent shaped boats, which are indigenous in nature to the indigenous Egyptians. So you have these square boats here, and then at the bottom you have the crescent-shaped boats, which are the indigenous Egyptian boats. So this is showing the naval or the sea battle dealing with the invading Mesopotamians and the indigenous Egyptians. Right? And then on the other side of the knife, you have what? Hopefully you guys can see that. A Mesopotamian or Sumerian This is the other side of the knife, showing the battle. Okay. Found in in the pre-dynastic era of Egypt. Okay. Now, and then what do you see during the pre-dynastic era going into the first dynasty, all the way through the first dynasty? You'll see symbols like this with the falcon. Now, what is that saying? Okay. See, when we see these certain symbols, we think it's, something that has to do with, strictly Egypt. But when we're seeing these falcon symbols, okay, these were the first kings that were in pre-dynastic Egypt all the way through the first dynasty. Oh, there you go. Let me just keep it right there. All right. Falcons at this time are dealing with what? The falcon tribe. We're going to show that. Okay. And then once you start going a little further into the second dynasty and so on, the symbols start to change a little bit. Okay. But the first kings that were in Egypt, okay, we're going to show that they were not sons of Mizraim. Okay. Okay. Now let's deal with the Great Migration. Okay. I just want to show a little bit of this history before we actually get into the meat of it.
The Great Migration.
Mm-hmm.
In Genesis chapter 10, there's a long list of many different tribes of the earth that existed after mankind emerged from Noah's flood.
Mm-hmm.
This passage is known as the Table of Nations,
Mm-hmm.
and the list of organized under the three sons of Noah,
Mm-hmm.
Shem, Ham, and Japheth. It is to the list that David Raoul is drawn after he brings his readers to accept the inevitable conclusion that dynastic Egypt was founded by the invaders from Mesopotamia.
Right. So you had and let me go back a little bit, because you had Egyptians that were in Egypt, okay, that had a kingdom set up but it wasn't technologically advanced like how it just seems to be today. It just seems to just pop up, okay. But a lot of that technology, a lot of the unification that came to Egypt, a lot of its greatness they have to attribute to Mesopotamia. Egypt did not acquire all that greatness on its own. Okay? Go ahead. So in Genesis chapter 10, there was a long list of many different tribes of the earth that existed after mankind emerged from Noah's flood. This passage is known as the Table of Nations, and the list is organized under the three sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. It is to this list that David Roll is drawn after he brings his readers to accept the inevitable conclusion that dynastic Egypt was founded by invaders from Mesopotamia. Go ahead,
According to the Table of Nations, account that there were 4 children of Ham, and the 3 of them settled in Africa, specifically Cush, Mizraim, and Put. The land of Cush is known throughout the Old Testament as the region of modern-day Sudan, Ethiopia, to the south of Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
The land of the west of Egypt, modern-day Libya, is believed to be the land of Phut.
Mm-hmm.
And the land of Egypt itself is named throughout the Old Testament as Mizraim.
So, you have this, and like I mentioned at the class, I got to print out, because I only got the main parts of this, which, is not too important when it comes to this topic, because I got all I need for this main topic. But the rest of the migration, I didn't think that I would really need a lot of it, but when I wanted to bring this out, I didn't print it out. So, but I do have the main parts, that I need. But I'm just going to go into the scriptures to show this migration and why it actually happened, because we have to think, like, okay, if these Sumerians were in Mesopotamia, what happened that they had to migrate from Mesopotamia to come all the way to Egypt? What was the purpose of that? What was the purpose of them getting on their boats, okay, and then coming over into Egypt? Okay, we're gonna show the reason for that. Okay, and if you get the Giza Discovery, it's not a PDF or anything like that. You can just go type in the Giza Discovery, and it'll pop up. Both, it got 2 volumes to it. I think the first volume is maybe like 10 or 11 chapters. Each chapter has different topics within it, and then the volume 2, I believe, has like two or three chapters with different sections in it. Okay, but what happened to these Mesopotamians that made them leave Mesopotamia, okay, and come over into Egypt and invade Egypt and start ruling there? Okay, what made them conquer Egypt and start something there? Okay, let's go to the book of Genesis, chapter 14. Genesis 14 and 1. Right up.
And it came to pass in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Ellasar, Shadar, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of the nations, that these made war with Berah, king of Sodom, and with Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Amar, and Shemeber, king of Zimboyim, and the king of Bela, which is Zior.
Jump down to verse 10. Now, when you look into the book of Jasher, Amraphel is actually Nimrod. Okay, Amraphel is Nimrod. When you go into the book of Jasher, chapter 16, verse 1. As a matter of fact, let me grab that real quick.
Go ahead, brother. Verse 10. And the vale of Siddim was full of slime pits, and the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, and flee there, and fell there, Salakia. And they that remained fled to the mountain, and they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah, and all their victuals, and went their way. And they took Lot, Abram's brother's son, whom dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. And there came one that had escaped, and told Abram the Hebrew, for he dwelt in the plain of Mary, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol, and brother of Aner. And these were confederate with Abram. And when Abram heard that the brother was taken captive, he armed his trained servants, born in his house, 318, and pursued them unto Dan. And he divided himself against them, he and his servants by night, and smote them.
So you have Amraphel, which we're going to show is Nimrod. Okay, him and these other kings, they're doing battle, okay, and Lot ends up getting taken, right, and Abram finds out. Now he goes, gathers some of his men, and he goes to do battle to bring back Lot and his family, right? Go ahead, brother. Let's see what happens.
And pursued them unto Hobah, which is on the left hand of Damascus.
Mm-hmm.
And he brought back all goods, and also brought again his brother Lot, and his goods, and the woman also, and the people. And the king of Sodom went out to meet him after his return from the slaughter of Sodom, and all of the kings that were with them, in the valley of Shavah, which is the king's dale. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High. And he blessed them, and said, Blessed be Abram the Most High, God, possessor of the heaven and earth, and bless the Most High God, which hath delivered thine enemies into thy hand, and gave him tilts of all.
1 second. Go back to verse 12. Read, because I just want to find this one. Read verse 12 again. Start at verse 12.
Genesis 14, verse 12. And they took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. And there came one that had escaped, and told Abram the Hebrew, for he dwelt in the plain of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol, and the brother of Aner, and these were confederate with Abram. And when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his trained servants, born in his own house, 318, and pursued them unto Dan.
Go ahead.
And he divided himself against thee, he and his servants by night, and smote them, and pursued them unto Hobah, which is on the left hand of Damascus. And he brought back all the goods, and also brought his brother again Lot, and his goods, and the woman also, and the people.
All right, so you have Abram, right? That went to go get back his nephew Lot, and he went and slew those kings. Okay, now among these kings, you had who? You had Nimrod, who was ruling where? In Mesopotamia. Okay, he had his he had Sumer, he had Babel, he had Erech, he had a few kingdoms there, right? Now let's get the book of Jasher. Jasher chapter 16. And we're going to start at verse 1.
Verse 1. At the time of Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, sent all the neighboring kings to Nimrod, king of Shinar, who was then under his power.
Hold on, read that again.
At the time Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, sent all the neighboring kings to Nimrod, king of Shinar.
To Nimrod, king of Shinar. So when you read in Genesis 14:1, Amraphel, king of Shinar, is actually Nimrod. Go ahead.
Who was then under his power, and to Tidal, king of Gayah, and to Arioch, king of Elasar, with whom he made a covenant, saying, Come up to me and assist me, that we may smite all the towns of Sodom and its inhabitants, for they have rebelled against me these 13 years. And these 4 kings went up with all their camps, about 800,000 men, and they went as they were, and smite every man that they found in their road. And the 5 kings of Sodom and Gomorrah, Shinab king of Adar, and Shemeber king of Zomboyah, Bera king of Sodom, Bashar king of Gomorrah, and Bala king of Zion, went out to meet them. They all joined together in the valley of Siddim.
Right.
And these 9 kings made war in the valley of Siddim. And the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah were smitten before the kings of Elam. And the valley of Siddim was full of lime pits, and the king of Elam pursued the kings of Sodom. And the kings of Sodom with their camps fled and fell into lime pits. And all that remained went to the mountain for safety. And the 5 kings of Elam came after them and pursued them to the gates of Sodom. And they took all that there was in Sodom. Verse 6. And they plundered all the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. And they also took Lot, Abram's brother's son, and his property, and they seized all goods of the cities of Sodom. And they went away with Eunuch, Abram's servant.
Jump down to verse 7.
And Abram heard this, and he rose up with about 318 men that they were with him, and he that night pursued these kings and smote them. And they fell before Abram and his men. And they were none remaining but the 4 kings who fled. And they went each his own road.
So you have, in this battle with Abram, okay, you have Abram that smote Nimrod and the rest of the kings that were with him, okay, and it says that when he smote them, he says they fled and they each went their own road. So what happened that the Mesopotamians had to pack up and leave Mesopotamia and go somewhere else, go to Egypt. It happened when Abram did the slaughter, took down those kings, all right, destroyed Nimrod and his army, and that caused them to, pack up and go somewhere else. Okay? And then once they packed up and went to Egypt, they invaded Egypt and they settled there. All right? So that was so I wanted to get just a little bit of that understanding so that once we get to this main part, we got a little bit of the history parts of this document out of the way. All right? Now, let me see. Okay, so now let's get to the Ham and Horus section of this topic. Okay. All right. We're done with that. Okay. All right. So let's get this part.
After the great flood, we come to a curious incident in which Ham, one of the 3 sons of Noah, dishonors his father. This brings about another curse, which is the curse from Noah, given because of Ham's indiscretion, but applied to Ham's son Canaan.
So we have an issue within the scriptures that Ham, okay, we all know the story that Ham sees Noah naked. Okay, goes back, tells his brothers. All right, his brothers get the garment. All right, they walk in backwards and they cover up Noah. Okay, and when Noah awakes, he realizes what his son has done, and he curses Canaan. Okay, now one thing that we have to understand when it comes to this specific story is that even within the other nations, they have the records that apply to their forefathers. Okay, they have in their records where their forefathers was during the time of the flood, what happened to their forefathers after the flood, and where they migrated to. Now we're going to show that some of it, some of it is a little, twisted and screwed up, because obviously, things happen within these nations that that the children of Israel were a part of, as far as our God doing certain things to these nations, and no one wants to be seen as the loser throughout history. So they take little bits and pieces of their history and twist it around and take the negative parts out and only focus on the greatness of their country or of their people. So a lot of their histories are twisted and screwed up based off of what our God did to a lot of to their to these different nations, right? So we have this incident. Okay. Now, in order to find out what happened, because a lot of times, even within, our records, we don't know what happened to him as far as after he leaves Noah. We only know a little, we get little bits and pieces there, here and there, but we don't know as far as what happened to him, after he leaves Mount Ararat and, and the whole history, way beyond Ararat. Okay. So when you go into the Sumerian text, the children of Ham have they have documented what was written of their forefather. Okay, and they have the histories of him when he was on Ararat, what happened to him after he left Ararat, and so on and so forth. The same way we have about our ancestor Abraham. We have what happened to him in Mesopotamia. We have what happened to him after he left Mesopotamia. We have what happened to him when he died. And we have all the way down through Jacob, all the way down to the prophecies of us living in these times. All right? So let's go into it a little bit and find out, okay, what happened with Ham. Okay, go ahead.
In the Sumerian king list.
In the Sumerian kings list. Okay, go ahead.
And in the myth of Emmekar, and the Lord of Ararat.
In the myth of Enmerkar and the Lord of Ararat or Arata. Okay, Arata is the Sumerian rendering of Ararat. Okay, so within the Sumerian text, they have these same stories or these same tellings that we would have in the scriptures. They have a flood story in the Sumerian text. Okay, they have many different ways or different renderings of it, but they have their flood stories. Okay, now one thing that we when we look at some of these things, we or people, when they look at these things, they see these names, okay, of these people within the Sumerian text, not realizing that these people, okay, are people that are from the scripture. They just have Sumerian names put on them. Okay, like how we're gonna show and see. Okay, now remember we're going into the understanding of religion, and we pulled out the two components: nature worship and ancestor worship. Right? These were the two components of any religion. Okay, nature worship, and then you have ancestor worship. We read it in the Wisdom of Solomon when men would deify these different elements, and then we read when men would deify people. Okay, so what we're going to show is that Ham is actually just, or Horus is actually just a deified version of Ham. Okay, so in Merkar, when you go into this document, okay, this is a document that shows, and it shows that Osiris, okay, is really Nimrod. Okay, Osiris is really Nimrod. All right, and it goes into just a lot of different evidences. It's pretty interesting. I mean, it's a really thick document, so I won't be able to go through everything, but I encourage us to get this, and it has a lot of good history, a lot of good archaeological evidence, and a lot of facts that you can look up on your own and really go into. All right, so in Merkar and the Lord of Arata. Now Arata is, like I said, the Sumerian rendering of Ararat. So who would the Lord of Arata be? Okay, It would be Noah. He was the elder on that mountain. So he would be the Lord of Arata, the Lord of Ararat. Okay? Go ahead.
Both Cush and Nimrod are said to be the descendants of Utu.
Mm-hmm.
If Utu is to be found within the book of Genesis, then Utu can only be Ham.
So you have in the Sumerian text, okay, in the story of Enmerkar and the Lord of Arata. Now, Enmerkar would be Nimrod, and they have a character in the Enmerkar and the Lord of Arata named Miskeshkagar. I'm bad with these names, all right, but this would be Cush. Okay, so like I said, when you're looking in these these stories and you see these different names of these people, we forget that these are actually biblical characters just with Sumerian names on them. Okay, so you have Cush and you have Nimrod, Meshkeshkar, and Enmerkar, which would be Nimrod, and then you have a character named Utu. Within this specific story, Enmerkar and Mishkeshgar, whatever, okay, they're said to be the sons of Utu. Okay, so if that's the case, then Utu in the Sumerian text can be none other. If Nimrod and Cush are said to be the sons of Utu, then Utu can only be Ham. Okay? Utu can only be Ham in the Sumerian text. Okay? Now, keep going up.
The third son of Noah, who is described negatively in Genesis.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, written within the Sumerian mythology,
Mm-hmm.
specifically Enki in the world order, we find that Utu is glorified.
Mm-hmm. So what you have within, so then you have another text called Enki and the World Order. Now I have a book that I had a long time ago, okay, by Zechariah Sitchin, called The Lost Book of Enki. Okay? And within this text, within this document, they actually identify, and Enki is a Sumerian god. Okay? It's a Sumerian god. That's supposed to be a picture of him. Okay? A Sumerian deity. Right? Now, within the Giza discovery, they actually identify Enki as being Lucifer himself. Okay? So you have Enki, or so you have in the text, the Sumerian text, Enki in the World Order. You have Enki, which they have identified within this document as being Lucifer. Okay? I would go into details, but we running short on time, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. But they identify him as being Lucifer himself. Okay? So it says we find that Utu is Ham glorified. Okay? So in the Sumerian text, Ham's name is Utu. In the Bible, we call him Ham. Okay? Go ahead, brother. So let's get it's a section out of Enki in the World Order. All right, that's written here. I want to get something out of here. Just read that part.
Enki, placed in charge of the whole heaven and the earth, the hero,
Mm-hmm.
the bull who comes out of the sore forest, bellowing truculently.
Mm-hmm.
The youth Utu, the bull standing, comes triumphantly, audaciously, majestically, and the father of the great city.
Mm-hmm.
The great city Harad in the east of the holy, and the judge who searches out the verdicts for the gods, with the lapis lazuli beard, rising from the horizon into the holy heavens. Utu became known as the sun god in the Sumerian mythology.
Utu became known as the sun god. Okay? Within Sumerian mythology. Remember, they would deify their ancestors. Utu became the sun god in the Sumerian mythology. Go ahead. Utu being Ham. Go ahead.
And the God of truth and justice.
And the God of truth and justice. Now, why would Ham be glorified or deified as a sun god and as the God of truth and justice? Okay? We're going to see. Go ahead.
In the Akkadian language, Utu is known as Shamash.
In the Akkadian language, Utu or Ham is known as Shamash. Now, when you look up Shamash, Shamash is the sun deity in the Akkadian culture. Okay? Utu in the Sumerian text is really Ham from the Bible. Okay? They glorified him, and in the Akkadian culture they called him Shamash. Now when you look up Shamash, you can Google Shamash, Shamash, and the sun deity Shamash is going to come up. Okay? But when you look into the Akkadian stories of the flood, and even after the flood, Shamash is really Ham, the son of the Lord of Arata, or the son of the Lord of Ararat, which is Noah. Okay? They said he's the God of truth and justice. Now, why would they deem him as the God of truth and justice? We're going to find out. Go ahead.
It was Ham's grandson, Nimrod, who was responsible for the Tower of Babel. And we have already shown how this is portrayed in the Sumerian myth as Emerkar's attempt to renovate the holy Abzu and Uradu of honor of Enki. In the description of the role given to Utu by Enki, we can perhaps read how the young Ham left the home of his father Noah in a fury of indignation because of what he perceived to be as an unjustice verdict against himself and his son.
An unjustice verdict against him and his son. So, of course, we know that once Noah said, "Cursed be Canaan," that had to have Ham highly upset. Okay? He thought an injustice was done. So he leaves Noah upset, angry, because Noah pronounced this curse on his son. Okay? He said what he perceived to be an unjust verdict against himself and his son. Go ahead.
Then Enki appears.
Now you won't find this in the Hebrew text, but when you go into the Sumerian stories, they tell this story of Utu leaving the Lord of Arata, which is Noah, upset and angry because of the verdict that the Lord of Arata has pronounced against him and his son. And then after he leaves the Lord of Arata, or Noah, guess who appears to receive him once he leaves his father? Enki. Okay? Which is a spiritual being, which is an extra dimensional being, which they identify here as within this document as Lucifer, as Satan himself. Okay? Once Utu or Shamash or Ham leaves, Enki appears to receive him. Go ahead.
Offering flattering words. And deceitful
promises. So you know when Ham left, Lucifer was right there. So you know what, that was kind of messed up what your father did. You know, I heard the whole thing. You know, how dare he curse your son? Your son ain't had nothing to do with that, right? But guess what? I got something for you. You come with me, and I'm going to make sure that you get that you and your children get the justice and the rights that you deserve. Okay? Deceitful promises. Go ahead.
After which we find that Ham becomes deified by Enki as the sun god and the god of justice.
So after Ham leaves Noah, Enki or Lucifer appears, and he makes him all these promises. Okay? And within this promise, Enki or Lucifer deifies Ham. Okay? It says he makes him the sun god. Now, you see, you won't find this in the Hebrew text, but the Sumerians and the Mesopotamians and the Akkadians, they have their records on what happened with their forefathers. The same way that we have what happened with our forefathers. So within their text, they say, okay, after Utu or Ham leaves Noah, the great god Enki or Lucifer finds him, and he makes him this great god, this god of the sun and the god of justice. So why would Shamash be the god of justice? Because on Mount Ararat, after he felt an injustice was done by the Lord of Arata, or Noah. So Lucifer takes and says, I'm going to make you the god of justice. Since an injustice was done to you, I'm going to make you the god of justice, and I'm going to make you a sun god. Okay? And listen, Ham being as upset as he was, he took that. Okay, go ahead.
In Egyptian myth, we find that Ham is most likely represented as the god Horus.
See, now in Egyptian myth, it says we find that Ham is most likely represented as the god Horus. Okay, it's going to show why. Go ahead.
This may sound confusing on the surface.
It may sound confusing on the surface. Go ahead.
Because Horus is usually viewed as the son of Osiris.
Because Horus is usually viewed as the son of Osiris. Go ahead.
Who has been shown to be Nimrod.
In this document, they show Osiris to be Nimrod. Go ahead.
The grandson of Ham.
The grandson of Ham. Remember, all deities are nothing but a deified element of nature or a deified ancestor. Or some sort of spirit, like a fallen angel or something. Okay, go ahead.
The problem is resolved once we realize that the earliest Egyptian myths described Horus as either the brother or uncle of Osiris. Eventually, two separate Horus identities appeared, whom Plutarch refers to as Horus the Elder and Horus the Younger.
So in earlier Egyptian myth, you have different elements of the stories of Horus. You don't have just one story of Horus. Okay? They had two types. You had Horus the Elder, and then you had Horus the Younger, which nowadays we more so know Horus the Younger, but we don't know about Horus the Elder. Okay? Remember that tribe that came over into Egypt was called what? The Falcon tribe. Okay? We're going to show why they were called the Falcon tribe. Okay? Go ahead.
The latter being the well-known son of Osiris and the great unifier of Egypt. This interpretation makes sense because of the fact shown that the code of Horus was well known some time before the code of Osiris was established.
See that? Now, it's showing us that the cult of Horus was established well before the cult of Osiris. So in no way, shape, or form can Horus be the son, or whatever the case may be, to Osiris if his cult was before any cult of Osiris. Okay? I want to go into, and the book that I was actually going into is Encyclopedia of Ancient Egypt. Okay? And within this book, on page 158, under the chapter Horus, the king's protector, all right, you have a section called A God in Many Forms. Okay? And it says, the Horus cult was widespread in Egypt and expressed in many ways. All right? Horus the Elder was a battle god, as he was the destroyer of Seth and the god of the sky, sun, and moon. Okay? So, 1 second. Okay. So, again, it's showing that Horus does not just have one form. There's many different forms when it comes to Horus. Okay? He's a god in many forms. He was widespread all over Egypt. So there's not just one form, but you have before we have all these modern day understanding of Horus, there was only the cult that was established before the cult of Osiris. We were dealing with Horus the Elder. Okay, and it's the reason why they called him Horus the Elder. Okay, just as you have the Lord of Arata, who was Noah, Horus the Elder was just as they point out here. One second. Forgive me, these pages are kind of thick. I keep on missing my page. One second. Because remember we had the two basic elements. You had nature worship and then you had ancestor worship. And I don't want to misquote it. Okay, here we go. So it says, alongside the nature worship component of early religion, it was also understood that as primitive man advanced, a tendency arose to deify some of the more influential human ancestors that had left behind significant, meaningful legacies. This practice of ancestor worship was acknowledged by the ancient cultures themselves, okay, and widely written about by the Greeks. So if the children of Ham was going to deify anybody during the time that mankind was doing this, deifying people, they definitely would have deified Ham. He was their elder. This is why the first Horus was called Horus the Elder. He was an elder among the people. Okay? He was a historical figure. And we're going to show and prove that beyond any shadow of doubt that Horus is Ham. We haven't got to that part yet, but we inching towards it. Okay? We inching towards it. So you have Horus the Elder, and then you have Horus the Younger. Horus the Younger is who we know today as the son of Osiris. But before any of that, you had Horus the Elder. Okay? Go ahead, brother.
The worship of Horus dates back to the pre-dynastic times.
The worship of Horus dates back to the pre-dynastic era. Go ahead.
To the Falcon City of Niken.
To the Falcon City of Niken. So the people who were coming over, the Falcon tribe, they were worshippers of who? Horus. Okay? Their deity was Horus, which is why they carried around the falcon symbol, like how you have. 1 second. You see that on that bird on that flag, which is the falcon symbol. This is showing the conquering of the indigenous Egyptians. Okay? And the flag that's between them has a falcon on top of it, showing that the people that conquered the indigenous peoples that came from Mesopotamia were followers of Horus. Okay? Go ahead.
While concrete evidence for the worship of Osiris appears first only in the 4th dynasty.
Read that part again.
While concrete evidence for the worship of Osiris first appears only in the 4th dynasty.
See, so only in the 4th dynasty do you have concrete evidence of the worship of Osiris. But before that, it was Horus. Horus the Elder. Okay? So again, still, when you see things like this, okay, the Falcon tribe conquering, okay, indigenous Egyptians. Okay? Go ahead.
Horus was the god of the Falcon tribe.
Horus was the god of the Falcon tribe. Okay? Now we also know that Horus is what? He's also a sun god. Okay? Making that Egyptian connection with the Akkadian Shamash. Okay? Horus was the god of the Falcon tribe. When they left Mesopotamia, they came over here and they built Niken, which is city of the Falcon. Okay? The first cult during that was the cult of Horus, way before any cult of Osiris, which came in the 4th dynasty. So who was Horus the Elder? Okay? In the Akkadian culture, he was Shamash, the god of the sun, the god of truth and justice. Okay? Based off of the fact that Noah, what he thought was an injustice, Enki came and said, I'm going to make you the god of justice, truth and justice. Okay? In Egyptian culture, okay, he's Horus. Go ahead.
Who were the dynastic invaders of the Nile Valley who came from Mesopotamia in the immediate aftermath of the fall of Eridu. As worshippers of Enki, they identified above all with him their most important post-flood ancestors, who was, as we have shown, honored by Enki as the sun god.
So it says, as the worshippers of Enki. So these invaders, their god was Horus, but their supreme deity was Lucifer himself. Okay? So these invaders, they weren't worshiping the Most High. Enki, the Sumerian god Enki, whom in this document they show and prove that he is Lucifer, he was their supreme deity. But their ancestor that they deified was Ham. Okay? It says, as worshippers of Enki, they identified above all with Ham, their most important post-flood ancestor, who was, as we have shown, honored by Enki as the sun god. Okay? Go ahead.
In Egypt, we also find that Horus is closely identified with the sun.
In Egypt, we also find that Horus is closely identified with the sun. Go ahead.
As Harati, or Horus of the two horizons, Horus was the god of the rising and setting sun, but more particularly the god of the east and the sunrise. In the pyramid text, the deceased king is said to be reborn in the eastern sky of Harati. Eventually, Harati became a part of the Heliopolis sun cult and was fused with the solar god as Re-Harati. as Bediti, or he, of the Bedat. Horus was the hawk-winged sun disk, which seems to incorporate the idea of passage of the sun through the sky. As Hamachis, or Horus in the horizon, Horus was visualized as the sun god in falcon and leonine form.
Go ahead.
Further evidence that Horus can be identified as the biblical Ham comes from the fact that throughout Egyptian texts there are repeated references to the deity Four Sons of Horus, which is documented in the book The Ancient God Speaks, a guide to Egyptian religion.
So it says, further evidence that Horus can be identified as the biblical Ham comes from the fact that throughout Egyptian texts there are repeated references to the deified four sons of Horus. Okay? The deified four sons of Horus. Okay? It says, which is documented in the book The Ancient Gods Speak, a guide to Egyptian religion. Go ahead.
These four sons are mentioned 14 times in the pyramid text.
These four sons are mentioned 14 times in the pyramid text. Now remember, all these people did was deify their ancestors. Okay? Go ahead.
Throughout the many coffin texts of the Middle Kingdom, throughout the Book of the Dead, and the Book of Gates, and they even appeared as representations of the canopic containers holding organs of the deceased and royal, even the royal tombs. If Horus is indeed a deification of Ham, then
if Horus is indeed the deification of Ham, go ahead.
Then the biblical names of these four sons would be Cush, Mizraim, Phut, and Canaan.
So these four sons of Horus would have to be the biblical Mizraim, Phut, Canaan, and Cush. Okay? And it says that they would represent them on the canopic jars. Okay? So when you see things like this, this is the deification of the four sons of Ham, or the four sons of Horus. Mizraim, Cush, Phut, and Canaan. Okay? Remember, that's all religion is. It's just a deification of nature elements or ancestors. That's it. Okay? Or spirit worship. Alright? Go ahead.
The descendants of Ham were Flinders Petrie Falcon tribe, known to the Egyptians as the Shemush Hor, or followers of Horus, who migrated from Mesopotamia and settled in the northeast Africa and around the Mediterranean basin. They all worship various forms of the god Enki as their primary god.
They worship various forms of Enki as their primary god,
which can be traced back to Enki's spiritual seduction of Ham after Ham's unfortunate episode in the house of Noah. It seems that at every important stage of the book of Genesis, we find a description of events very similar to pagan accounts, but the interpretation of the events is given a completely opposite spin.
All right, so let's get down. Let's get to it. We got one more to go, and then we're gonna cut short. We're gonna cut it out. To prove beyond any shadow of doubt, right, that Horus is Ham. Okay. Let's go to the book of Enoch for the last precept. Enoch chapter 89. Enoch chapter 89. And we're going to start at verse at verse 1. As a matter of fact, no, we're not going to start at verse 1. Let's get okay, we'll start at verse 7. 89, Enoch 89 and 7.
Verse 7. See them, and they were not able to escape, but perish and sink into the depths. And again I saw in the vision till those water torrents were removed from the high roof, and the chasms of the earth were leveled up, and other abysses were opened. Then the water began to run down into these, till the earth became visible. But that vessel settled unto the earth, and the darkness retired, and light appeared. But the white bull, which had became a man, came out of that vessel, and the 3 bulls with him.
So he says, and the white bull came out of that vessel, which is Noah. Go ahead.
And one of those 3 was white like the bull, and one of them was red, and one was black.
So we see that Noah and his 3 sons are being represented in this vision as bulls. Okay? Enoch saw this vision, and within his vision, Noah and his 3 sons are being represented as bulls. Okay? The white bull is Noah. The other white bull is Shem. And then you have the other one, which was, what was the other colors? Red and black. Okay? So you have all the sons are being represented as bulls. Right? Shem, Ham, and Japheth are being represented as bulls. Right? Now, this picture here, you see what? A falcon. Okay? With the, with the crown on his head, symbolizing the unified Upper and Lower Egypt. Right? So this is definitely Horus. Right? A.K.a. Shamash in the Akkadian. A.K.a. Ham in the Hebrew text. Right? But then at the bottom of this pedestal that he's sitting on, what do you have? They pictured a bull under him, letting you know exactly who this is. One of the sons of Noah. Definitely isn't Shem. Definitely isn't Japheth. None other than Ham himself. Okay? None other than Ham himself. You got the falcon. Okay? The deified Ham after Enki got a hold to him, or aka Lucifer got a hold to him. And the other symbol recognizing him as a son of Noah, the bull from the vision of Enoch. Alright? So Horus, aka Ham, alright, Ham is just the deified, is just Horus deified. That's it. No other way can you get around any other religion. Any of these religions. They're either, and with Horus, with Ham, they gave him a nature element, and they also turned him into a form of ancestor worship. He made him a sun deity, and he deified him. So every single religion, what you have is according to the Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 13 and 14, all you have is nature worship and ancestor worship. Okay? Horus is Ham. Alright? Okay. So that's it. I don't know if anyone is trying to, is saying shalom or, Shabbat shalom. It's not coming in. Okay. So video slow. Oh, probably from before. All right. I think it's coming in. So if anyone has anything, question or comment or anything like that, we'll take that for the next 2 or 3 minutes. We're in the 2 hours, so we're gonna cut it short.